Hi, I'm Lisette Jacobson, host of the Black, Brown, and Bilingue podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Saturday morning, or it may be well into Sunday. It may be, well into your evening on Sunday, but it doesn't matter wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for making us part of your day. And as always, very grateful for all the likes, shares, and follows. We just celebrated our 200th episode this week, on Wednesday actually, with the amazing Tanya Avrith, and today is the start of another wonderful 100 episodes, and I am just so excited. Thank you so much again for all the love, guys. As you know, our mission is to connect educators and creators one show at a time, and I am excited about today's conversation. As you know, we've definitely been doing a lot of shows on AI in education, K-12 space, higher ed space. And I am honored to have Eidik here from Curipod, who's going to be joining us. And we're going to be talking about all things AI in the classroom. We're going to be talking about their amazing platform and just the amazing things that teachers have already been able to do, and of course getting some sneak peeks and into what will be coming. So please make sure that you are joining us, make sure that you pay close attention, make sure that you follow them on social media as well, so you can get all this information and not miss out. So let's go ahead and dive in. Eidik, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great. This is, I'm super excited. There's so much fun things happening right now. So I actually just came from a product workshop. We've been diving into some new features. So then I'm always in a good mood then.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited that you're in a good mood. You definitely look like you're very energized, as so am I. I am so energized because I definitely want to dive in and talk about your platform. But before we do that, I just always like to all our guests. Obviously, there's so many educators out there. Maybe some of them have not heard of Currypod yet. However, we know that as educators, we will definitely be spreading the word out there, and we want to make sure that everybody is familiar with who you are and your platform. So, if you can give us a little brief introduction and your context in the education space, and then we'll go ahead and dive in.
Super. So just a quick introduction of Curipod is a tool to create interactive lessons catering to 21st century skills in 10 seconds. That's the overall goal. And our mission is, there are two things, and we try to do both at the same time. One is student engagement, and the other is teacher burnout. If we can help by increase the first one and decrease the second one, that's why we're here. That's kind of a really short introduction to Curipod. Do you want kind of my introduction here as well, or?
Yes, please. If you can introduce yourself. Well, what I like to
Yeah.
do is I always like all our guests that come on, they all have an origin story. So
Yeah.
we know, for example, reading your profile, very interesting as well, your story. And then, of course, coming into this space as well. So I would love for you to take us as far back as you can. And usually what I like to do is I like to start with the question of, was education a space that you thought you would be coming into, or is this something that obviously came in later as you did your studies and the work that you were doing?
That's a fun story, and I think my origin story is tightly intertwined with Curipod. So the answer to your question is yes and no. Yes for a while, then no, and then suddenly yes. So I can start really early. I start with just, I loved school. That's who I am. Not from kind of the first years, but I think in 5th grade or something, my mother started bribing me with candy to do math at the evenings. And really luckily for my health, that outer motivation of kind of candy really fast turned to an inner motivation. I got this kick of being ahead and everything like this. And so I usually say that I was born with what I call an Hermione instinct. If you ask a question, my hand goes like this. For those of you listening in, it just went straight up in the air. And I had that Hermione instinct, and I just loved school. And I did a lot of stuff. I finished high school. Then I worked as an educator in Norway for a little while. I moved to Mozambique, a small country next to South Africa, where I worked as a teacher, taught music. And that was incredibly rewarding. And after a while, I moved back to Norway and started studying economics. So that's when kind of my yes to whether I would be in education turned into no, because I got really fascinated by economics. And my first year at the economics education, I met a guy called Jens. For those of you who know us, Jens is my co-founder. And we started working together in everything, right? That's, I'm a morning person. That means I have a lot of energy at 6 a.m. So usually I would go down to his house, I would knock on his door, I would drag him out of bed, make him some egg and bacon, and get us started. He's not the morning person. And then around 3 p.m., then I really want to go home and watch Netflix or read a book or something. And then Jens has woken up. Around 3 p.m., he usually wakes up. And then he could kind of push us through the rest of the evening. So we worked really well together. And after working with Jens for 2.5 years, he told me that he had actually dropped out of high school. And that's when everything started with Curipod, because being kind of the Hermione kid in class, I didn't know when he dropped out. And I got really interested in why he dropped out, because he is to this day the smartest person I've ever met. So I really didn't understand it. And for him, it was all about motivation. I had never had a problem with motivation. I loved school. So that was kind of how we started discussing education again. And that's how I kind of backtracked into education, was we started discussing this a lot. And we really felt like there should be an easier way to make kind of engaging, really kind of engaging, interactive 21st century skills lessons. And we started working on Curipod at the end of our studies, and we continued after our studies. And after building a really great platform here in Norway, which our users, they used us so much, we thought it was really hard to onboard new teachers. And that's because making really good kind of modern 21st century skill lessons takes so much time. Right? If you do rote learning, you can just fetch something someone else has made. But if you want your kids to care about or to argue or to critically assess something, it should be something they care about. So you as teachers always have to kind of find examples from your local community, personalize it, localize it. And that takes so much time. And that's when we started digging into AI, was when we figured out how much of a problem teacher burnout was, and how our platform, as good as it was, would always just be something new. So it's just added workload. So it worked great, but it added workload. So how can we keep the great part, keep the student engagement, but reduce workload? There you basically got my life story. So and Curipod's origin story.
No, but that's wonderful. And you know what? That's so great to hear, because I love it, because you touched, two different types of students, two different types of learning styles. Like you said, I'm more very much like you. I am an early bird, and I like to get done everything as soon as possible. But by 3 o'clock, I'm like, yeah, that's it. I'm done. But, and it's great that you and Jens were able to team up. And then obviously you understanding his story and where he's coming from. I have currently colleagues that have similar stories. I mean, they did graduate high school, they did get their degrees, but the experience they had in the classroom was very similar to, like you described, Jens, which was, not very much motivated. Again, it didn't mean that they didn't know the content, but it was just they weren't motivated enough. They weren't, I guess either challenged and so on. So
there's so many different stories, right? And that's what I have been reflecting so much about after leaving school, is how much my behavior affects the rest of the class. So if ever anyone has tried Curipod, they will see one thing is the AI generation of content, but it's also a large part student engagement in it. And that part is really designed to make sure everyone participates in, because I've thought so much about what happened every time I raise my hand. Every time I raise my hand, there are 5 other kids thinking, no way I'm going to answer, because Eirik will answer it better. There are 5 who thinks, nice, I don't need to answer because Eirik will answer it. There are 5 who thinks, I can answer it, but my answer will be ish good. And then after I answer it, the teacher will just turn to Eirik as well, and he will outshine it. So kind of the social dynamics of classrooms, that's what we studied when we kind of created Curipod. It's how can we kind of make Eirik and Jens participate in the same time? That's what kind of the starting point of Curipod.
That is amazing. And you're absolutely right. Oftentimes you will get those students, first ones. And again, sometimes, and it's all about processing time. I think that's one of the things that I learned in the classroom going from high school and then to elementary. It's just the processing time. Oftentimes, as teachers and myself, I'm speaking for myself and my classroom experiences. We have a curriculum, we have dates, we have to finish and do something by a certain time, and oftentimes we don't allow for that processing time and that discourse to occur in the classroom, those classroom discussions, so we can involve everybody, because it's like it's always go, 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 and we have to finish. And we miss out on so many of those wonderful learning experiences and learning moments. And I love what you said, that because of that problem, you talked it through, came up with a solution such as Curipod. And the fact of the matter is, you're absolutely right. The fact that all students can participate at a given time, and whether it's, hey, we're going to raise our hand, or we're going to input, we're going to draw, we're going to give feedback, every student is involved, and you don't have to feel intimidated. Like, if somebody answers first, it's okay. Don't worry, you're going to go ahead and have your time. But what I love is that everybody is part of that learning process. And I think that when I got into elementary, I found that to be the most useful, where my activities had to shift from just for my students get a sit and get. It was more of like, hey, let's be active in the learning, let's discuss, let's give feedback, and so on. And that really makes a big difference.
I love what you're saying there about elementary, because our experience was a bit strange when we first kind of got into kind of the educational field, because we saw that when we interviewed teachers, like how we build Curipod is we just try to spend as much time as we can inside classrooms. That's kind of just sit in classes, and we make sure everyone in Curipod sits in on classes. Like our developers should spend a lot of time in schools, right? Because one thing is they should understand classrooms, but they should also understand kind of how high quality is the Wi-Fi in schools, high quality is the projector, right? That decides a lot what you build. But I think our biggest kind of shock coming in kind of a bit of outsiders. I had worked as a teacher, but still, like as a team, we were outsiders to education. Elementary teachers usually talked so kind of in awe about how they did it in primary, and then primary talked about secondary, and secondary talked about university. So everyone was kind of in awe about kind of how they did it higher up. And our experience was, let's turn it around, right? It's elementary teachers, they know pedagogics. So if we can build something with the pedagogics of elementary teachers and then just scale it upwards, it's work for everyone, right? So I think kind of, I love what you're saying, because the younger you get, the better the teachers become at kind of facilitating that discussion that is so important for kind of the 21st century skills, right?
Absolutely.
So that was a super interesting part of the journey.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a question here. And first of all, I want to thank Amanda Macias, who's joining us, and she's a great supporter of the show. So her question is this. It says, where do you see Curipod fit into the SAMR model? Substitution, augmentation, modification, redefinition. So what are your thoughts on that, Eirik?
So I think, and that's a really good question. I think we started out more of kind of the higher skills. So Curipod started out focusing on the higher skills, modification, redefinition. And we have the last 3 months focused a lot on the kind of beginning steps, kind of substitution, augmentation. And so I think we try to cover it all. That's kind of, we are quite clear that we want to be a tool that works for your whole lesson. Our like I like to say, my biggest competitor, and this worked better a few years ago, but my biggest competitor was the blackboard. Right? It's kind of like, we want to be something that can help you through your whole lesson.
Excellent. Perfect. And yes, absolutely right. As far as, the delivery system, oftentimes what happens is we're just simply substituting something that could still be done on paper. And I'm still okay with paper, but what I want to
Oh yeah,
say now
big fan.
is that now with the tools that we have, whether you're an iPad classroom or whether you're a Chromebook classroom, most classrooms already have devices. So how can we take it instead of substituting a paper worksheet to a digital worksheet? And I made a comment, I think it was a last episode or a couple of episodes back, where as a teacher, before we even had Chromebooks in our classes, so I'm kind of aging myself because we didn't have that when I was still in the classroom, but it was an ominous and scary stack at the end of the day when I had three classes and I had three stacks of papers there at the end of the day. That was very scary because it's like, oh my gosh, I have a lot of grading to do. Then we
Yeah.
started using the Chromebooks, and then it just turned into a digital stack. But then what happened is I started taking risks and becoming a little bit more creative and saying, hey, I want to see maybe either you creating a screencast video, you can use Screencastify, Google Slides, you can go ahead and use Flip, you can use Edpuzzle, you can create anything. And that to me was a little bit more fun to modify and, of course, augment the lesson, because now the students are the ones that are creating that for me. And now I'm able to see their learning process and fix any misconceptions right then and there, give feedback. And that's the one thing that I love, that the feedback was immediate for all my students rather than having to wait until I grade and then just at the end, I'm just tired. But again, I love the fact that you make it so easy to prepare, not having to reinvent the wheel. But what I love, and we're going to demo this in just a second, but what I love is that I can go ahead and put my concept in, what I want to teach. And then what I do is I copy directly from the Texas standards and put in there for my learning objective. And now I don't have to reinvent the wheel. Or like you mentioned, Adic, many times as teachers, let's say you're a new teacher. Let's say that maybe for some reason you don't get the resources that you need. At the beginning of the year, sometimes, and I'm going to be honest with my experience, sometimes teachers don't like to share their stuff because it's like, oh, this is mine. And so sometimes you're siloed out. But as a teacher that might be coming in, now I don't have to go hunt the internet, Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, and so on, which are all great resources. But now I have a nice base to start off with. And then I can go ahead and mold that lesson
Yeah.
and shape it so I can meet the needs of my students and, just create that learning experience. And that's the one thing that I love there.
Oh, that's amazing. And I think actually when it comes to kind of our pedagogics is there is one thing we really try to cater to, and that is if I look into kind of my crystal ball and try to see the future, I don't believe the future of I think technology will have a big place in the classroom, but I don't believe the future of a 60-minute lesson is 20 minutes inside this app, 20 minutes inside this app, and 20 minutes inside this app. So what we try to do when we design the activities in Curipod is we really aim for you do 3 minutes, 4 minutes of the Curipod activity, and it should give you 20 minutes of in-class conversation, discussion, learning, right? So that's kind of, and that should be like, that's kind of the base we do every time we design an activity. That's the baseline, because Curipod could be something you use through a 60-minute lesson, but you shouldn't need to use more than 4 activities, and the rest should be in class, right? We're just a catalyst. We kind of with technology, you can remove a lot of what we call social barriers, right? Everything I talked about, when I raise my hand, there's a million things happening in class, and we can use technology to take that away. We can use technology to give a few more students in the classroom a voice, but the learning happens when they talk together. We're just a catalyst of that conversation. And that's going to be really important for everything we do, right? We don't aim for a future where like the teachers are the teachers. They're the important part of the classroom. We're just a tool to catalyze that conversation.
Excellent. And just that I agree with Amanda. Amanda's here. She put a comment here. She says, preach. I mean, everything that you're saying is definitely spot on. And I absolutely love it. All right. So before we get into the demo process, this is always a question that always comes up, and especially with this technology. And again, AI and all of that, it's not anything that is new because we've used this before as educators, but oftentimes we never saw it because it was simply already in a platform where the algorithms and everything would just either put a student on a set pathway to close some learning gaps. So as teachers, we really didn't think about like, oh no, it's just a computer program. It does it for me. They get their path, closes the gaps, I get reports and so on. But then from, late November, December on, that technology has now been more forward facing and up in our face where now teachers are like, whoa, now I'm understanding what this does and how this works. And of course, it causes just a little bit of skepticism. Well, maybe a lot of skepticism, some fear, because as we know, things that are new and coming into our landscape, it causes that fear. And now we're thinking, being more cautious, being more just, okay, how is this going to affect me? Because we saw so many narratives out there. So, Adek, I want to know from you, as you and again, I first met you at TCA. We had connected prior to that, but since TCEA, back in February, up to date, up to now, what has been the reaction of course, AI in your space, but now when teachers see your platform, how do they feel after that?
Wow, a great question. I'll try to kind of answer it in a few parts here. So first of all, teachers need praise, because no other occupation have to face AI as much as teachers, right? Because in the tech world, they can either just say, yes, we use it, or no, we don't use it. Like, we're pro it, and then we use it. We're skeptical, then we don't use it. That's true for any occupation except education, right? No matter, and I think there's a lot of validity to both sides, but no matter whether you are pro or skeptical to AI, educators have to face it because the students are grasping hold of it. So that's kind of my first just answer is, you're doing an amazing job just being that kind of, yeah, you're forced on kind of so much change, and it's really impressive to see how you handle it. I think some of them, like if you take the general population and see who understands AI the best at the moment, teachers are among the best at the moment. So the reaction we get is usually, oh wow, AI can do this. And I think that's a bit about how kind of we frame it, because you don't need to understand AI to utilize Curipod. We try to do all kind of the consideration and the wrapping for you and just make it a really neat tool, right? For example, you can use Curipod to be like, you as a teacher are the one that knows your class. So you, in Curipod, we have a tool that's generating a lesson hook, some interesting discussion question to start up the lesson with. You are the teacher. You're the one that knows that, okay, my class thinks the solar system is a bit boring. I need a lesson hook. The part we do is we just utilize AI to help you be a bit creative. So instead of you using 50 minutes thinking of a question hook, and that's hard, right? Because you have to kind of see the world through the eyes of your students. That's not easy. So we let it be creative for you there. And that's kind of how we try to build with it, is to just be a useful tool.
Yeah. And what I love about it, it's really like you described it. I would consider this either your co-teacher, your co-pilot, your assistant. And that's really what it is, because oftentimes, going back and thinking in the classroom, coming up with lessons. And for myself, I was one of those teachers that I never liked to repeat the same lesson year after year. So I was always doing research. I was pulling from all over the internet. I would piecemeal lessons together just to make it a little bit more exciting. And that took a lot of time and a lot of effort that at the end was rewarding more often than not. But sometimes the lessons didn't quite go the way that you thought they would. And you're like, oh my goodness, all of that work. But now, like you said, right now, it's if the lesson that you're thinking about, maybe you already have something, but you say, hey, I just want to add a little bit more spice to it. You totally can. And you have your assistant, which is
Yeah.
Curipod, that can go ahead and help you. And one of the things that I must say is, for example, there are many platforms out there that may look a little bit more ominous for teachers, and you have to work a little bit more and a little bit harder and so on. Like, especially if you're using like Chat GPT, you really have to go in there in depth and detail, which is great and all. But something like Curipod, where you can type in the topic for your lesson and then the learning objective and standard, and it comes up with something that is a great start for a teacher. And that's what I love, that it's not something that is ominous. It's something that is very easy to use and that teachers can really just plug and play in seconds. And that's great. So what I'm going to do, Adic, is I'm going to pretend I'm in my 5th grade classroom again. And what I'm going to do is
Awesome.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So here is the platform that we have. And so what I'm going to do is, if I was in 5th grade, what I want to do is I want to do a lesson on physical properties of matter. Now, I can easily, and I've done this before prior, can type this in and I can have it create its magic. But one thing that I always say is, if you're in Texas, you know that you have to go with what the standards are, because the standards, I just want to reiterate, are not suggestions on how to teach the class. Here in Texas, Tech TEA really takes those standards seriously. So it's like what the students must learn and how you must teach or approach that segment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do this one right here, classifying physical properties of matter. And I am just going to go into this section right here. Or let me see if it'll let me do the whole thing. And I will go here, right, and paste, and let's have it do its magic. Okay, it says an error occurred. Okay.
Might be too long of a
Yeah,
objective.
it's probably too long. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just stop here. Not going to worry about relative density. I can do that in another lesson. So let's go here. And in a couple of seconds, as it works.
Cool question from Tobias there about the tech standards. So we are doing a huge makeover of the standards part quite soon to make it easier to add longer standards.
Yeah. So there you go. So Tobias, some of our TEAC standards are lengthy. Yep. That's exactly what you saw.
Yeah.
All right. So now here, this is what we have here. All right. We just have a lesson. Name one physical property of matter. We've got our slides. So as a teacher, I mean, look, we can actually change those pictures too as well. The concepts and so on. So this is what we have available. And we can either create a new lesson, we can do something that's completely different. And again, to me and to my amazement, it's just really the fact that I have my lesson, I can customize it, I can go ahead and edit to meet the needs of my classes, because I know not in every class I'm going to have students that are all at the same level. We have different learning styles. We also have students that may need some additional supports. So now the thinking for myself as a teacher, I'm like, now I can really think specifics for my students, but because I already have something that is there that I can go ahead and just bring up. And that's the thing that I love about it. You guys did such an amazing job. Like Amanda says here, the floor, it says here, low floor, high ceiling for EDU. So yeah. So again, it's a very low barrier to entry. And that's one thing that I absolutely love.
Wow.
So yeah. So what are your thoughts like on seeing some of this? Love it. What would I be seeing here, or what can I do? What are the other things that I can do here? Let me bring this up here. So for example, let's say I've got home,
So
I've got
if you go
discover.
create lesson,
All right.
if you press create lesson, I just want to see if I can get you into the new. We have a new designer out, so just try to do blank lesson and see what it creates. That see if I can get you into the new designer. I don't think it will pop up within the next 24 hours. Can I share my screen? Is that
Yes,
possible?
absolutely. Let's go ahead and do that.
Because then I can give you a sneak peek on a lot of stuff that's happening here.
Yes, that's what I would love.
Okay, super.
So let me see. Just go ahead and share your screen, and
there you are. Do you all see it?
There you go.
Awesome. So this is the new designer in Curipod. So it's made to be a bit more flexible. So you can still create your full lesson here, but you see what we work with is this, what we call small generators. We work a lot with them. And the reason is the full lesson, it gives you a good starting point. But you as a teacher should be free to kind of personalize this. So let's say you want to start your lesson with a check-in. And I go check-in, and I generate my check-in, and I can add it here. What can you do to show kindness to others today? Okay, that's good. Let's say I want, so here you have a lot of them, and you can also kind of view them in categories here. So you have, here are the content creators. So for example, this one is my new favorite. It says, explain the concept like I'm 5. So if we, for example, do animal habitats or photosynthesis, that's fun. Photosynthesis. And here it explains photosynthesis to a 5-year-old. So all of these generators, there is so much to kind of go through. I really recommend playing around with all of the ones playing here in personalized feedback, because they also give feedback on a lot of the questions.
Yeah.
So this is kind of one section. Another section is there will probably come a lot more fun things to do with translations quite far. We know a lot of you have a lot of different Spanish speaking or so many languages in your classroom. So we're trying to make it really easy to translate a lot of the content. Another really interesting thing here is this lesson library. So here you can search for all the public lessons in Curipod. So let's do photosynthesis here as well. And here I can go through, okay, so here I got a lesson on photosynthesis, and I can add the slides I like from this one. So yeah, here and in the generator part, there will come so much more fun. And it's all about just making the processes you do today easier.
Yes. And Eric, what I wanted to add is that this is something that is amazing, and the fact that you can customize. I mean, everything is there in one place, and like you mentioned earlier, the goal is not to spend 20 minutes on one platform and then another 20 on another platform and so on, which is often the case. And I'm going to be honest, because there's so many districts that we have specific platforms or targeted platforms for certain things, but then you go from one to another for independent practice, and then you go to another. And what happens too is that as a district, you try to standardize, but of course, we know that teachers are going to go and do their own thing because we get the freemiums, or if you're an ambassador, you get like the whole year free and so on. But what I love is I've always been a big fan of the one-stop shop. That's what I call it. And like you mentioned here, and what we saw, the fact that you have those little individual generators that you can generate specific slide added to your presentation, you're really now focusing more, like I mentioned earlier, targeting your specific students in the sense of bringing to them the content the way they need it to be presented, mixing it in, having some fun with it, engaging them with the feedback. And you're looking as a teacher, you're just giving that feedback continually. You're giving some praises. The students are all participating. They're all included within the lesson. And so they all get a time to share, which I mean, for me, that's the most important thing, that as a teacher, sometimes I realize that it's very hard for us to slow down because state testing and curriculum, and you have to meet certain deadlines. But if we just have something like this, like you just shared with us, and have that time to give the students the ability to interact with the learning, internalize it, learn it, speak it, write it, draw it, and so on, it can make a world of a difference. So I absolutely love what you shared, and we're definitely looking forward to having access to that and being able to bring that into our classrooms. So I wanted to ask, now that we're on in this conversation, is there any other awesome sauce that Curipod is working on as far as in the near future?
Oh, cool! I actually see my co-founder in the comment field here, Frick. The learning objective capabilities. That is one thing we're really diving into. One thing is to make sure that it's easier to get all the generators to cater through it, but also how can we help with it, right? Because the learning objectives, as we know, they really cover what you have to learn, but they're also usually the language is not language of kids, right? So we work so much with the learning objectives right now. How can we utilize them even better? How can we make them even how can we help you teach the learning objectives, right? Because you as teachers usually have to spend a lot of time okay, this is the learning objective. I can't use this sentence to a 12-year-old, right? They want to understand this. So how can I break this down? So we work a lot with kind of that area. So that's kind of one area we're really digging into. And I think another area is just making it easier to personalize your lesson really fast. Just make it suit really well to this class exactly. Like my goal is that you should be able to go into your classroom and you don't have your lesson and you just start it and then it kind of builds itself, right? Like based on your students' input, right? Okay, so my students thought this was interesting and then I go that direction, but then Curipod helps you kind of make sure that you reach your end goal. So yeah, we have some ideas there as well.
Oh, that would be amazing. That would be wonderful. And especially, as you know, classroom size is a big issue. So to be very active in a classroom when it's 1 to 27, 1 to 32, maybe even more, walking around and making sure that the students are getting that feedback, sometimes that could be very hard. But I can definitely see something like this where myself as a student, maybe I get an answer incorrect, where I can go ahead and get like a little resource and says, hey, and helping me or helping the teacher fix that misconception on the spot and things of that sort. That could be something that'd be great too as well. So I love what you're saying and I'm really excited about it because as we know, that initial fear, obviously everybody felt it, but now that we're seeing tools and especially yours that is very well refined into and friendly in the K-12 space, and I would even say that this could be perfect even just for district PD, even for higher ed, because of the tools that you have available. I mean, this could be used all the way through as far as the education landscape. So I absolutely love that what you're bringing there. So what I want to ask now is, for example, what advice would you give? Well, actually, before we go to that next question, it says Amanda Macias, is there a way to share creations across a PLC? Great question, Amanda.
Yes, you can create a share link to any lesson and send it to other educators.
That's perfect. So I can see that if my content specialists in our district, or actually our content specialists in our district often create resources. So I can see that they can create a base lesson
Yeah.
and then they can go ahead and put it into the curriculum with the link. Teachers open up that day and say, hey, this is what I need to work on. Let me see what the district gave me as far as kind of a base. And then they can go ahead and edit as needed for their classrooms.
In the district licenses as well, we also actually have a shared workspace where the curriculum creators can push things down through to the different grades. So we create these for the 7th grade teacher and put it in this folder.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, I love that. I love that. All right. So we'll get into that in just a second before we wrap up. But one of the questions that I did want to ask is, what is some of the advice, as there's so much talk about AI and there's a lot of teachers that may still be a little bit fearful. Talking about Curipod, what would be some of your advice that you would give some educators to maybe think about and really consider integrating your platform into their classroom?
Wow, that's a cool question. First of all, I think I would just say, like, one thing is Curipod, but just start with learning about AI. That's kind of the baseline because, like, I think it's really healthy to have the discussion, like, how much should we integrate AI? But whether or not we kind of, how we stand in that discussion, AI is kind of taken over a lot of processes, right? So students need to know about it. So that's kind of my baseline, is just that we need to understand what it is. And then after moving from that, we need to understand what to discuss every time we kind of, like, because there will come a lot of new platforms. Like Curipod, we're one platform, there will come other platforms. How do you think about this? For example, AI and ethics, AI and privacy. What is the difference between using AI to give feedback and using AI to grade someone, right? They're really similar activities, right? You take student input and you have the AI help you create some feedback. But on one side, you just use it for feedback. On the other side, you kind of decide the kid's future. So just understanding a bit more of what it is really helps.
Excellent.
And yeah, we actually just launched an accelerator program where we help schools and districts to understand AI. So we select 10 to 20 selected schools and districts to do this. So I think we feel responsible in educating people in AI as well, right? Because we know we put AI in the hands of teachers, and that's a big responsibility. And then when it comes to Curipod, I really think just start out with letting Curipod help you to be creative, right? Just test one thing, test the brain break. Okay, I figured out the fun brain break, and then you move on from there.
Absolutely. Love it. Great tips. And again, you mentioned a lot of great stuff in there, and it's really just getting informed. But one thing that I do want to highlight is your accelerator program, because this is amazing. The fact that you are aware of the fears that are out there, you are aware of, as great as the tool can be, the questions are always data privacy, teacher student data privacy. And you hit the point there where, as for your platform, the fact that you're out there educating schools and bringing this information to the school districts, also it shows how conscientious you are of what is out there, what could be happening, but the fact that you are really dedicated to showing that this is something that shouldn't be feared, but it could be highly leveraged to really enhance the learning experience. So I think that's something that is wonderful.
Thank you. It's just as I opened with. Basically, teachers are kind of forced to take a stand and think about AI, and it's really tough, right? There's so much new in it. So when I talk about how should people learn about AI, my biggest kind of advice is just start with having fun with it, and then you understand it a bit. Like, I'm a big Harry Potter fan. The first thing I did when I got ChatGPT was I went into ChatGPT and said, create a text-based adventure in the world of Harry Potter. And I spent 4 hours just answering, okay, I'll go there, I'll say this to this person. I kind of created my own game inside ChatGPT and had fun with it. And through that process, I also learned about it. So use it for something that you just think is fun, and then you kind of understand a bit around it.
Excellent. Yeah, just like what I kind of tell my teachers is just get clicky with it. That's the advice I give them all the time. Whenever we have
That's
a
a
new
nice word.
platform and we go in there, I just say, hey, get clicky with it, have some fun, figure it out, use it to what you need it, and then just kind of build from there and grow, because the possibilities really are endless. You definitely have started adding more to the platform, and there's definitely so many choices that you can do and that you can go through to really enhance that learning experience, which I love. And more than anything too, you mentioned creativity, and I'm a huge proponent of amplifying creativity, not only for the student but for the teachers as well. Having some fun with class, and more importantly, like you said, lightening the load, because that was the goal. We talked about teacher burnout, so you found that as being one of the problems, and offering Curipod as somewhat of a solution to that, or part of a solution of a bigger scope to help
Yeah.
teachers really just come in and not spend as much time on their lesson plans, or actually, excuse me, on their lesson planning, because they can create it. But now you have resources that they can pick and choose from and can be done fairly easy. And that really helps out a lot, because again, I always said, if there's a platform out there that can give teachers anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes back of their day, of their time, to just simply either just sit at their desk, with the lights off and just breathe, that's a win right there. And we definitely want to do that. And
Or get
maybe
Saturdays back.
and maybe even more, and just enjoy their weekends, no worrying about creating anything, because everything is going to be good to go. So that's wonderful. Well, Adek, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. And again, for all our audience members that were joining us here, we had Amanda, we had Tobias, we had Mel. Thank you, Frick, for joining us too as well. Adek, how can all our audience members, get in touch with you and with anybody at Curipod?
Many ways. Shout out that I spent a lot of my day on Twitter, so you can shout out there in any way. My email is Eirik, EIRIK, @curipod.com, and just find us. Like, if we're out in conferences or anything in classrooms, I will wear my orange pants, so I'm easy to spot, and we love speaking with teachers. That's what we do here. So yeah, any kind of feedback, questions, you want some help, just reach out. We have a Slack community. You can find it on our website, where we have so many teachers discussing, kind of helping each other out with everything.
Excellent. Now, also tell us a little bit about your ambassador program.
Oh yeah, We have an ambassador program, which is basically it's a two side. We want to help teachers that want to promote Curipod, but we also want to connect teachers kind of as closely as possible because it's teachers that build Curipod, right? We're facilitators. We try to figure out that we interview teachers and we find some problems, and then we try to make some ideas, and then we let teachers test it out. So I really hope a lot of kind of users will apply to the ambassador program, um, and it's such a great fun. We had a big meetup 2 weeks ago, and we're going to do a lot of more. So yeah,
Excellent. And you will be at ISTE, like I asked you earlier. So please make
yes,
sure you look out for the orange pants and the Curipod shirts at ISTE and make sure you do talk to them. They are some of the nicest, wonderful people. I had the opportunity to meet Jensen also at TCEA, and they really, truly listen to teacher feedback. I love the way they were going from booth to booth, just finding people to talk to and who else should we talk to and who else can we talk to, and just your friendliness. It's something that is amazing. So I wish you all continued success. I'm really excited for what is to come. And of course, just the continual growth of not only Curipod, but just AI in the education landscape in general. So thank you so much, Eidik. But before we wrap up, I always love to end the show with the following three questions. So I know I put them there in the calendar invite, Eidik. So I hopefully you did get a chance to kind of see them. So my first question to you is, in the current state of education, what would you say is your current edu kryptonite?
that's great. I need you to elaborate it. Do you mean my personal one or education?
Well, like the one that you see in the education landscape. Yeah. The personal one that you have.
Um, that's a really tough question. I have been thinking so much of it, but kind of my biggest, I have two answers to it. One is kind of with AI. AI has the potential of creating, bridging the whole learning gap that is there because we kind of give students access to so much kind of tutored help. But it also has the potential of creating the biggest learning gap in history because it's just some students learn about AI and some don't. That can create such trouble. So that's kind of my one big thing. And the other is how much what we test affect what you teachers can teach. Kind of, yeah. Testing not changing rapidly enough to allow you to actually be the awesome teachers you are. That's another big kind of fair. And that's coming like we of course are colored by coming from the Norwegian tradition, right? So that's but yeah, I think that's my 2 points.
Eidik, those are great points. And I'll be honest with you, I think you are my very first guest that has ever answered with two edu kryptonite responses. So what a great way to start these next 100 episodes. So that's a wonderful answer. Thank you so much, Eidik.
Thank you.
Next question is, if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Be curious. That's why we started Curipod, right? Because we wanted to just help make it easy for students to be curious, right? There are so many blockers for being Curipod in the classroom, and it's not the teacher's fault, right? It's social dynamics. It's how classroom and schools are built up, and just like if we can just keep that natural curiosity every kid has when they're really young and get that into the school system, that's kind of the big dream.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. Being in education and seeing it, from high school to elementary, at least through my personal experience, is that, kinder through second, students are very hands on, they're coloring, they're having some fun, they're being creative, still that sense of curiosity. But from third grade all the way through ninth grade, where it's high stakes testing grades, you feel like there's a little bit of that is removed because now you're focused more on the state testing, and so that curiosity may not be as high as it used to be when you were young, because now it's like it's really sit and get, because we just need to give you the test material so you can pass these exams. And yes, I agree with you. I'm all about that. All right, the last question for you, Eidik. I know that you said that you are a morning person, very much like I am, but I want to ask you is, what would you do if you had the question is, what would you do if you had one extra hour in your day, But what I'm going to ask you is, because you are a morning person, is what would you do if you had 1 extra hour for your morning?
Whew, that's a good question. The honest answer right now is work, just because Curipod is so much fun. So 1 extra hour a day means one more teacher interview. If I wasn't doing Curipod, read. I think I love reading, and I don't get enough time to it. So if I could spend 1 more hour just reading a good book, that's what makes me really happy.
Excellent. Great answer, Adik. Well, Adik, thank you so much again for just your authenticity, genuineness, just your enthusiasm that you brought here to the show this morning, which is really a reflection of everybody on the team, like Jens. Jens, I wish you well. I know Jens is a little bit under the weather, and but Jens, thank you so much, and hopefully we can get Jens on and Frick on also maybe one of these days, and have you all on as well, and maybe we can do a little panel and something like
Oh, that
that.
would be
But
great.
I again appreciate the work that you are doing. The vision that you have is wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that vision. Also, so our educators that maybe are not familiar with the platform yet, once they hear about they hear the show, listen to the clips and so on, it'll pique that curiosity and they can go in there, get clicky with it, and amplify their creativity and enhance the learning. So thank you so much again. And for all our audience members, Mel, thank you for stopping by. Tobias, thank you for stopping by. Amanda, thank you as always. And Frick also as well. Appreciate you all for joining us in the comments. Sherry Fleischer also, who joins us on LinkedIn. Thank you so much. I want to give you all a shout out. And to all of you that will be catching this on the replay, thank you as always from the bottom of my heart for making my EdTech life what it is today. Again, we do what we do for you because we want to bring some great conversations into the education space to inspire new teachers, veteran teachers, and teachers all over the world with all that our amazing guests have to share. Please make sure that you stop by our website at myedtech.life, myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 200 amazing episodes with amazing educators and creators that you can go ahead and take some knowledge nuggets from, sprinkle them on to what you are already doing great. Also, guys, if you want to contribute to our mission, please make sure that you stop by our merch store where we have some great caps, sweaters. We've got all sorts of accessories as well. We know that summer conference season is here, so why not get yourself some My EdTech Life swag, or you can start preparing for your winter conference season as well. And as you know, all of that goes back to the show so we can continue to bring you some amazing interviews. And as always, my friends, from the bottom of my heart, don't forget, until next time, stay techie.